Mm. Okay, I'm sorry. The AirPods that my wife lent me is not working. So I will have to just use a speaker and hope it records well. I will record on my phone in case it isn't very clear. Okay, I will just use the washroom before we begin class. Let me just check once more. Cool. Nobody else's. Get right back. Sorry, the three frustrations, as I mentioned, it's a way to honor the teacher and each of us. Three frustrations. Okay, and we're going to continue with is starting with the opening prayers, which is to set our intention. And so, as this is just class two, we will just read it out in English. Right. So, yeah, we start with offering the mandala. It goes, here is the great earth, filled with the smell of incense, covered with a blanket of flowers, the great mountain, the four continents, wearing a jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of the Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratnam Malakam Niratayam. And then you turn to the back, which is the refuge and the wish, which is perfect because this is what this course is about. It's I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. So you repeat this 3 times. I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I achieve enlightenment. By the power of the goodness that I do in giving and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. Okay. So, usually start the class with a little review. So yes, I guess the question I wanted to start with is what are the 3 jewels? Because that was the subject first class. Hopefully you just heard it, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And now the second question I was going to ask is a bodhisattva an Arya, and an Arhat. Which one has seen emptiness? Which one has seen emptiness? And so it's not the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva has that desire to help all beings. And Arya has, which I have this picture that I had taken from my class when I first took it. I always been when I was listening to the classes, I would instead of just I mean I didn't have to write notes, but I wrote notes as a way to help me learn. And instead of just writing notes, I found drawing pictures also helps. So it's not bright enough, unfortunately, but there is a bubble here. Let me see in the light. Bodhisattva, seeing emptiness. Then there's an Arya, and usually an Arya, once they get rid of all their mental afflictions, becomes an Arhat, who is in Nirvana. So the point that was important to make is that in Nirvana is not necessarily a place like Vancouver, Victoria. It really is a state of mind. And meaning that if you do have that in your state of mind, where you're at can be nirvana. I'm just going to do something that the teacher did, and that is to see if I can not see myself when I teach, that I won't keep looking at myself. See if I can do that. Can't. Maybe I'll figure it out later, but so just don't mind me if I don't always look up at the screen. Because yeah, looking at yourself can be distracting. So I guess the other question that I wanted to review was, why is life suffering according to the Buddha? Um, and this is an important one because, well, there are many interesting things to learn in this world, many different ways to entertain yourselves. Just go on social media, my family does. There's just, I'm not exaggerating, but infinite number of TikToks, Instagram posts, Facebook updates, um, things you could spend multiple lifetimes, especially now when everyone can create their own content, which I'm adding to right now. So why did I spend so much time learning this, doing the homework, the quizzes, even continuing the courses when all the other students dropped out? Well, besides the obvious physical, mental, emotional, spiritual sufferings, there is also 6 sufferings they say we as humans have in this life. First is life is uncertain, and meaning that no matter how much you plan, how much what you do, how much you believe you have control, you don't know what will happen next. I was all set up for this laptop. I had this all set up, and then I go into Zoom and I can't find the meeting. And that took me like about 10, 15 minutes. So hopefully one of you was waiting to get on. But and this isn't uh, even kind of things out in the world. This will be an example, would be like what you think and feel, you know. You're watching this now. What do you think you'll feel in the next minute? What do you think you'll think about in the next 2 minutes? You don't know. You don't know whether it'll be an idea that you connect to, that doesn't make sense, or that you're confused about, or whether you're thinking it's a waste of time listening to this, learning about this, or yeah, that this is a great use of your time, that you're looking forward to coming to the next class. Mm, you have a plan for the rest of the day? I do, but as you know, it can change. And even if it doesn't change, how you feel and what you think during the day definitely is not something you can be certain about, even if it's something you like or you dislike. Do something you like and you end up doing it and you don't feel like doing it. Not so enjoyable. Or you're doing something you don't like and you have this resistance. And then when you start it, it seems enjoyable. It's okay today. Yeah. So always wanting more is another one. So think about the last meal you just had. After having that, maybe you're satisfied for a bit. And then once your tummy empties, maybe you think about your next meal or start having to prepare. You're wanting more. And this applies to a big goal, a project, school, any tiny big thing that you purchase, travel, clothing, hobby, whatever you would like, you'll notice that you end up wanting more. Are you satisfied? Yes, for a little while, but for how long? I like to think of myself as someone who doesn't want a lot, but it only takes a little while um, before that feeling disappears and you want more. I heard this quote. It was a new TV series, and I'm not sure if I got it completely right, but it says, being happy is simply the moment before you want to be happy again. Being happy, one moment, just waiting for you wanting to be happy in the next. Third one, they say that life starts and ends with suffering. Life starts and ends with suffering. What do they mean by that? Well, we may not remember, but according to the Buddhists, start of our life in the womb, in our mother's belly, is not the paradise that we may think it is. Um, Supposedly, the Buddhists say that we're trapped in here, squished. It smells. I can only eat what our mother's eating. And then when we're finally excreted forcefully, cold, naked, helpless, dependent on your parents. So God bless them for 20 plus years, some will say 30. Um, so, yeah, the start of life is not easy. Um, and even if you haven't faced any aging pains, you probably know about them. We talked about them last week. Um, I went to have my hernia surgery this past year, and I had to do this questionnaire, and it was quite amazing. It was like this pages and pages of things you had to check that you didn't have. Pretty much for every part of your body, there is potentially a disease, a problem, and that there are so many more uh, things which they don't even have an exact name for. Um, Something like gastrointestinal dysfunction is just kind of like a group. Uh, and many of those are things that, even after many, many years and lots of money and research, humans still haven't found a way to cure. So, yeah, getting sick, getting old is definitely what we're all facing day by day. And if you're lucky, you may be relatively symptom free. Um, but eventually you'll be sick with something, which will lead to your death, which, according to Buddhists, is also a pretty scary feeling, which I won't go into right now. But yeah. So fourth, the cycle of being born, getting old, sick, and dying, kind of just described. But according to the Buddhists, we continually go through this. This is why they call it a cycle of suffering, because you go through the suffering, then you experience it again. Um, so, and you could be reborn not as a human. You can be reborn um, as an animal, as a craving spirit, as a hell being, right? Three lower realms. And so the fifth, another suffering of what we experience is what goes up must go down. Um, and this applies to, I think, anything in nature you see, anything that grows eventually dies. Um, and if you think about goals, think about some goals that you have had, that you have accomplished, or that you're wanting to accomplish, you're working towards now. Think about your happiest moments in your life. I'm pretty sure you did not stay on that high when you accomplished, when you had your happiest moment. And when I first thought about this, I was reading a magazine, Sports Illustrated is one I really like, and in that Olympic magazine, kind of talking about uh, stories with Olympians getting ready for the Olympics. They basically had two stories about gold medal athletes who have won, and they both talked about how depressed they were the coming year and how they even felt extra bad about that because everyone thought they should be super happy. Um, and well, that happiness didn't last. Um, so finally, last suffering they will talk about is death. Not so much the pain itself of dying, but that whatever you work towards in this human life, uh, be it with your relationships, family, friends, personal relationships, money, whether you worked this lifetime towards being healthy, um, working to help others, um, none of it goes with you when you die. You can't take anything with you. And say nothing except the fruit of your actions, the karma. Whether you've done something good or whether you might have not done something good, that's the only thing that actually goes into your life. So everything you work for, you know, doesn't go with you. So, I mean, amongst these six. I don't know how many times I heard it, but at some point it really sunk in and made me want, as Buddha said, um, to get out of this cycle of suffering. You know, that there are, Buddha talked about the four Arya truths, the first one being life is suffering, that there is, second one is that there is a cause to this suffering, and that there is an end to the suffering, and that there is a path to the end of this suffering. And as it really sunk into my mind and heart that this was true, it really led me to, you know, want to continue on this path. Um, yeah. So this is why I'm here Saturday afternoon when there's, as I said, a gazillion pleasures this human life can offer. And I even described in the first course about how, if you ever watched the Disney movie Pinocchio, um, or even the story about Pinocchio, you'll remember, hopefully, that these young boys are lured into a playland where they can do whatever they want, eat, play, break things, and it almost seems like fun. It's just all pleasure, until they're slowly start turning into donkeys. Of After which, then they're herded off into the boat, to be slaughtered or something, or to work. But yeah, that image came to mind when I first heard about samsara and the sufferings that we here just to play, and then so what is this second Arya truth, cause to of our um, suffering? This concept they called emptiness that I referred to last class, that we want a direct perception of. I should grab a pen because that is traditionally how it is taught. So let me just grab one. So here it is. Just a regular pen, right? So when you look at it, you see a pen. It's used for writing, right? But what would a dog see if they came into this room? Or a baby see? Or someone from the Amazon who has never seen a pen before? Maybe a dog would see a chew toy. Baby see a chew toy too, or a plaything. Person from the Amazon maybe sees a weapon. You know? But yeah, I guess you can admit that different people may see this differently than how we see it. So what does this prove? What is this story about? It's about how we see this pen as being something outside of us. Um, when in reality, this object is a pen because of us putting a definition on it. Because we've used it before, most of us will label it as a pen. As I said, dog, baby, person who's never used a pen, they will put a different label on it. And so, yeah, that is a description of emptiness. And you might kind of go, well, okay, Maybe it is just another way of saying beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Different people see things differently. Well, yeah, it is saying that. But if you agree with that yes, we see something, different people see it, judge it differently in terms of its beauty, then you must admit that each person places their definition on this object. And so, what is important to take away from that is that if you believe that is true, then you realize that you are responsible for everything you see, every object you see. This computer, this phone, everything is something that your mind labels. And so, not be a real difficult concept to accept, but that might be because it's just an object. But what about a person? How about a person that you dislike, that triggers you, that upsets you, that has caused you trauma? Can you see them or what they've done supposedly to you as being something that you projected onto them? Because that might not be so easy. It might be easier to see, this not so nice person, someone existing outside of your mind, existing on their own, having these horrible qualities, characteristics. So basically, seeing them as being outside of you, not being caused by you. When in fact, emptiness, seeing this pen, recognizing it as a label that we've placed on it, is saying that this definition is one that you put on yourself. So this would apply to the person you don't like as being that way because of what you've placed on them. So how does this work? Why did you supposedly place, these not so good feelings, characteristics on this person? Well, they say you can't talk about emptiness without talking about karma. And supposedly, um, what we project onto this person or onto a thing comes from our actions in the past. Karma being an action, a thought, something we said, any movement of the mind, they say officially. So that, let's take, for example, someone who's yelled at you. They're yelling at you, supposedly because in the past, either in this life or a previous life, you've yelled at someone else. And so now that karma, that seed that was planted a while ago is now ripened. Now it's coming out into your life. So they'll say that our mind is like a movie projector, and it is projecting film, as we know, a film projector does. But this film is thoughts, speech, and action from our past, which makes sense. The film is recorded first, put into this format, and then played in a machine. And so supposedly every second, 64 karmas are ripening. And this is why everything we see in our lives is looks so fluid. Things are firing super duper fast. Um, and so this is how, you know, we label pen, computer, shirt, hair, glasses, and yes, unfortunately, we will label person who's done something mean to us as being mean. And this will also apply to those who we care about, love, enjoy being with, that we will also label them that way because we've treated other people that way too. So, yeah, this is the concept of emptiness um, that is supposed to help us, um, that explains, why we're suffering, how we're seeing everything outside of us as being existing on its own, kind of like, you know, this pen supposedly is radiating pen, there's some definition radiating pen. And we just come by and we see it and we go, oh, pen, the same way a light, a red traffic light glows red. You think, well, it's red. When in fact, it's really our mind projecting pen, red traffic light, or not so nice person, or very nice person. Um, so what does this mean? Um, Now, you may not agree with this. You might need to let this idea sink in a bit, but just imagine. Well, I mean, you can kind of go look at me and go, well, Hogan believes this, that things are coming from my mind, from my past karma. So ask, how does it help him? How does it help me? Well, first and foremost, it now gives me uh, responsibility for everything in my life, good to the bad. We'll start with the bad. If there's something bad that's happened to me, well, it's come from things I've done in the past. And if I don't want that to continue, then I can plant the seed, do the speech or thought or action to plant good karma. And here I'll use the example of being yelled at, which I definitely have received from those close to me, my wife, my kids, my mom. Um, that if that happens to me, I can do what by default, I won't say by default, but my reaction to that is I don't like it. And I get really upset. And I want to yell back or say something hurtful or do something mean, um, or even just think mean thoughts or what I might want to do to them. But what did that do? That just plants the seed to probably get that again. And then the cycle continues. But if I can kind of go, okay, um, I'm seeing this movie and feeling this because of what I've done in the past, and I want to see loving communication. I want to feel love. And instead, I might react differently, might bite my tongue at the least, or not take it, or ask them, you know, why they're reacting the way they are, or apologize for something that they thought I did, which made them so upset. And to plant a different seed so that I'll get a different uh, experience in the future. So, yes, being able to stop the things I don't like, being able to get more of what I do like, that is probably the biggest benefit of applying emptiness, understanding emptiness and applying it into your daily life. And that I can maybe explain a little bit further is just that when we do have suffering, all the things that we don't like, we can see those events and experiences as a way of purifying bad karma. That we are, you clearing out weeds that have grown in our mind. And now, as they're, if you planted a weed seed in your garden, you might not be able to pull it out. But when it finally comes out and it looks like a weed, not what you're trying to plant, you can then pull it out. So when you get a bad experience, that's what you're able to do, kind of pull it out and hopefully not plant in another bad seed. And so um, if you do want better results, as I said, I want to be told nicely what to do, to be spoken to kindly, then I can plant that. I can do that, especially when I've been just yelled at or hurt. So, yeah, that is what I am wanting to share. Just taking a look at time, we will kind of continue with what this class is about, more about refuge. And just open the door for Bella. So yeah, back to this class and back to refuge. And what is taking refuge is kind of the subject of this class. That last week, when we discussed the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha jewels, um, maybe just reviewing that Buddha jewel refers to the Buddha, and he is seen as that because he's taking care of, he's reached the end of the path. He's completed the path. He is happy. He's no longer suffering, and that he's fulfilled all his own needs and is able to help us with ours, by sharing his teachings. But the Dharma jewel, again, is the teachings physically, but also the teachings that exist in our mind, in our heart. And then the Sangha jewel is the beings, realized beings who have seen emptiness. So those three are the jewels, and that they're the refuge objects. But so taking refuge isn't just kind of saying that opening refuge, that I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha till I achieve enlightenment. Not just saying that over and over. I have a good story about how if you were at a park and it was raining large, suddenly it started raining buckets. And in the middle of the park, you see a little pavilion which can offer you shelter. You wouldn't just stand there and go pavilion, 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 because that's not going to give you protection. You actually have to walk to the pavilion and stand underneath it to get protection from the rain. So that is the difference between um, the refuge objects and going for refuge. Like going for refuge is actually the action of walking to the pavilion. So if you listen to the recordings by Geshe Michael Roach, you will hear um, a lot of what he shares shared in Tibetan. For, as I said, he did want people to help translate some of the texts. So this course, as you see in the homeworks, it always includes Tibetan. There's um, a track or part of the binder, which um, gives answers in Tibet. In the homework questions, if you're doing the Tibetan track, it's asking you to answer it in Tibetan. So just so that you can get a little taste of it, if you can just repeat what taking refuge is in Tibetan. So it's yo shela, rang top ki, rewa chawe, sempa kamdre, seni, seni. What does that mean? Taking refuge is a thought which of its own power puts all its hopes in another external object. Is a thought which of its own power puts all its hopes in another object. So it's just good to remember that it isn't something that you can do for yourself. Because if you did, you wouldn't need to think of something else. Right? And you have to remember, you know, to actually go for refuge, you first must have fear, or they'll say renunciation. Um, fear of uh, being reborn in the three lower realms, or renunciation in that you realize nothing in this world is going to make you happy. Um, so that is definitely one of the important factors of taking refuge. And the other is that the object of refuge can help you. If you're really fearful, you're being attacked, there's some being broken into, you believe, and you call the police, that the police can help you. Um, that if you're a young kid and you're something being bullied, attacked at school, that talking to the teacher, the principal, your parents is going to help. You wouldn't talk to your younger sister and brother who's physically smaller than you to help you because they might not be able to help. Right? So taking refuge is not something that actually we do all the time. We don't always take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, but we take it in worldly objects all the time, every day. We do things that we think will, ultimately make us happy. Um, that's things that we choose every day. I mean, maybe you're listening to this because you think it will make you happy. But we may do our job because we feel that it will give us money for shelter, for food, which, if you see things as being outside of you, it might seem like it's true, right? Go to work, and then later on you get paid. According to Buddhism, the act of going to work and the receiving of pay is actually two different karmas. That going to work, helping somebody else, organization or company do work may lead to other people helping you with your projects later on, but receiving money for that actually came because you were generous with your money. So that is the karma from something else. And so they use this example when they talk about maybe a thief who steals, let's just say from a bank, and receives money. It might seem that the thief received the money from the bank, but the karma of stealing from the bank will in the future lead to him being having something stolen from or just losing money. And again, the fact that he received money from the bank is because he was generous with money before. But if he wasn't, maybe he would rob the bank, but he'd get counterfeit money, or there'd be no money. A lot of banks now have very little money in the back safe. Um, so, just recognize and understand that um, an action and a result might seem the same, might lead one to another, but is not necessarily true. You can say doing exercise makes you feel better. Well, doing exercise can also make you feel, some people more sick, some people no different. Um, some people can injure themselves, right? So there's many different ways exercise can affect you. And if you did feel better, it's because supposedly you helped someone else feel better. Yeah. So, yeah, there's this, again, if this thought doesn't sit well, just sit with it. Um, one story Geshe Michael Roach was saying is that if an airline stewardess at the beginning of their flight intro, when you sat down, told you, oh, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, on this flight, da 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 da, we are using a slightly older plane today, and there is a chance that the plane may not take off or may not fly very long or may crash on landing. If you actually heard that, would you actually get on? Would you stay on the plane? That's the question. I think most of us would not. If there is maybe a high probability things are not going to work out, we're going to realize, it's not worth it. So this is why Buddhists are seeking Buddhahood. You know, um, taking the time and energy to learn, to contemplate, to meditate, to do good karma, so that they can reach Buddhahood, because they see, that life in samsara, this world that we live in, is not a guarantee for happiness. So this is why Buddhists will take refuge in the three jewels. So instead of worldly refuge, they said consider, the five divisions of Buddhist refuge or exceptional refuge. One of the five is, they say, one division is a small practitioner. So what does that mean? It means a small practitioner is one who wants to reach um, who has a fear of being born in the three lower realms, being born as a hell being, craving spirit, or as an animal. And so um, they have this fear, and as I mentioned last class, might not be so common in the West because we're not uh, born with this belief in reincarnation, understanding of these three lower realms. Um, that yeah, the Christians will may believe in hell. Um, they say Dante, an Italian poet from 1200, also and Christians describe hell similar to what the Buddhists describe. And there's a course on that which describes the details of hell. Um, I'm sure you've heard of people, we actually see it I think maybe more accepting of people who see spirits and ghosts, um, which the craving spirits are. I mean, specifically for Buddhists, they're ones who may not be able to eat or drink, um, a big head and a thin throat so that they can't consume what their desire, whether it's food or water. Right? Um, and now the other realm of animals, maybe a short explanation, because many people who have, I'd say, pets in first world might not believe animals are a lower realm. I believe they are actually quite blessed and would like to be reborn as a pet themselves. Well, definitely they are in the first world treated royally, but the majority of animals are bred to be slaughtered, to be worked, sometimes worked to death. That they say, the Buddhists say the majority of the animals are in the deep, dark ocean, where they live a life of being in fear of being eaten by a larger predator all the time. So, yeah, like being an animal is not uh, is considered one of the three lower realms. Um, so, uh, second division is a medium practitioner. And so, what does this mean? Medium practitioner wants to reach enlightenment for their own sake. You know, um, they also have the first that they don't want to be reborn, but as well as not being reborn in lower realms, they want to reach enlightenment. Um, they understand that everything's suffering, everything's going to pass. And so the large practitioner, also called the Mahayana practitioner, is what we are learning. It is what this training and Dalai Lama one is on. And it is about getting out of samsara, getting out of this cycle of life, suffering life, so that they can, for themselves, but also to help all other sentient beings so that they don't suffer. So, yes, Buddhists believe in aliens, you could say that, and that people in these large practitioners also desire what small or medium practitioners desire, that they also don't want to be reborn in the lower realms, or they want to reach enlightenment for themselves too. So they say you can't really help others if you don't really want to help yourself. So they do have, as I mentioned, the first two, um, that they put all their hopes in any number of the three jewels to protect every sentient being from the pain of samsara. So the fourth division is also a question in the homework. What is result refuge? Result refuge is going for refuge in your own future Buddhahood. That you can imagine what you would be like when you're a Buddha and going for refuge in that. And the fifth division of refuge is cause refuge. Um, cause refuge, which I typed exactly the same as result refuge, when what I really mean is cause refuge is going for refuge in another person who has the three jewels in their heart and mind. So, example, it could be your teacher, though you may not know. Yeah, there's a nice comment I wrote down. Taking refuge is taking responsibility for what is happening. Uh, okay. So one of the last parts of the class is the 8 qualities of a Buddha. What are the 8 qualities of a Buddha? First one is that the Buddha is uncaused. Now, it isn't that it took me a little clarification. Um, the hope for many Buddhists, including myself, is that we become a Buddha. So we do want to plant seeds for us to see ourselves. So you could say in that way, uh, a Buddha is created. But what they say is not created, uncaused, is the emptiness of a Buddha. What they also called his Dharmakaya, or his emptiness body. So this could be a little confusing, because, as I described, the emptiness of the pen, that the pen is not self-existent. Um, the emptiness of this pen is always there. It didn't just, you could say it appeared when the pen was created. Obviously, it was created from parts. When it was put together, started functioning as a pen, you could say the emptiness of the pen is part of this pen. And that'll continue to be there until there's no longer a pen. So for a Buddha, emptiness is always there. And they say that even now, each of us has the emptiness of a Buddha, which means that we can become a Buddha if the karma ripens. Now, this can also be confusing because this doesn't mean that within us there's a little Buddha that we simply need to polish and clean up our outer things for us to be a Buddha. It just means that we have that ability to be a Buddha. And that it is our emptiness which allows us to change. That if we were not empty, that if this was self-existent, like glowing a pen, that everyone would see it as a pen. Um, Everyone would see us as a Buddha. But yeah, that's probably not true. Okay, number 2, Buddha is spontaneous. And what does this mean? That think of the moon. Full moon's coming up soon. Mid-autumn, excuse me. So if the moon is out on any still reflective surface of water, you will see the moon if it's not blocked. And in the same way that you may see the moon in many, many still bodies of water, no matter how small or large, um, Buddha can emanate and be everywhere. And meaning that Buddha can have emanated as anybody in your family, your partner, anybody you work with, a boss that's yelling at you. Um, yeah, they can be inanimate or animate. Um, so that is another quality that says also realized by no other way, meaning that a person cannot see the emptiness. Coming back to it, excuse me, the first point, cannot see the emptiness body of a Buddha with, cannot see it conceptually or with one of your senses, um, except if you have the direct perception of emptiness. All right. So 4, 5, and 6 are linked. They say the quality of the Buddha is knowledge, meaning that he has knowledge of our suffering. He knows that he's aware of our condition. That connected to knowledge is love, you know, which is important because knowing someone is suffering, having knowledge is not great if they don't do anything about it, which in love means to help us. Um, and which is connected to the sixth one, which is power. That if you have knowledge, and if you have the desire to help somebody, if you have no power to help them, that's no good too. And the power of the Buddha is your ability to teach us. They can't change our karma. They can't change, what we do or say or think, but they can teach us. And the last two, number 7 and 8, are linked. They fulfill both his and our needs, which again, he is filled his because he's no longer suffering. He has a light body. It's not a physical body, but when they say a rainbow body that you could, like stick a pen through, and or you've heard probably the story of Jesus and supposedly, you know, Mary Magdalene, I think, stuck her finger through his hand and was able to, she could see his body, but it's almost like a ghost, I guess, could pass through. So he has a light body, he's happy, and they say he has fulfilled our needs by providing us with teachings. And the reason that we are not able to um, be a Buddha yet is because of our karma, having to burn off our bad karma and needing to accumulate more good karma, which we'll talk a bit more about next class. So why take refuge is the last little bit. In short term, there's no better protection. Allows you to take 3 types of Buddhist vows. Um, 3 types are freedom vows. There's actually 8 of those. 5 of those you can only take if you're a monk or a nun. There's bodhisattva vows. That's a desire to help others. And then there's the tantric vows, which are the secret vows. So yes, a little bit more about vows. They only work if you have the karma for them. Okay. So long-term benefit of taking refuge is to become a Buddha. Mhm. So I think I'm just going to end the class with just one part. I remember learning from a student in our teacher training, and she had gone to UBC, and she had, we were on the first day talking about how you learn and obstacles to learning, because, as they're starting this teacher training course, they don't know how they learn, what ways they learn best, how to deal with their obstacles for learning. They're not going to learn, and then they're going to waste their time and their money. So we had shared some answers, but one thing that I was really appreciative of, one student came in the next day and said, "Oh, I got this handout from my teacher." And the handout was a study um, from Teachers College, where they said, you retain 10% of what we read, 20% of what you hear, 30% of what you see, 50% of what you hear and see, 70% of what you discuss with others, 80% of what we explain to others. So guess what percentage of what we teach others we retain? Well, it's more than 80%. And no, it's not 100%. So if you guess 90, that is right. um, but basically, you just see that more you can share this with others, the easier it will be to remember. And so that is kind of my hope for you, that first to do the homework. There's a little meditation that you can that tells you to do. It's a 15-minute meditation on refuge. Actually, no, I think the homework for this week is whether you believe actually life is suffering. We'll just put that down. Yeah, I think that is the homework for this. Yeah, 15 minutes on whether you believe in the three lower realms. Okay, that's what it is. Um, I mean, I don't have a lot of time, but I know for some of you, you might not meditate. And all I can say is it's important that you try to keep the spine nice and tall. Ideally, come into a sitting position as you've done in yoga, um, cross-legged. If you cannot, extend out your legs, even sit on a chair. If you cannot fall asleep, even lie flat on your back. Otherwise, sit nice and tall. Your hands can just be placed flat down on your legs or in a little mudra. Usually, tips of your thumbs touch so that you keep them lightly touching. Closing your eyes and starting with 10 slow breaths. And then, if you like, so you don't have to keep looking at time, setting a little quiet timer on your phone. And then just, yeah, thinking about whether you believe in these three lower realms. So doing that every day. The homework is not, I think it's only 6 or 7 questions. The reading was same reading as from last week. So if you didn't do it, a few pages. Um, so yeah, I definitely wanted to encourage you do the homework so that you can uh, let what you've heard here sink in a bit more. Otherwise, we will just do the closing prayers. Sorry. So if you go back to your prayer sheet, we are going to do the dedication, goodness of the deed. Right. So again, we can do this in English this week. By the goodness of what I've just done, may all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two alternate bodies that merit and wisdom make. And then end with the 3 prostrations. I'm going to turn the camera a little lower so you can see what to do once you come down on the ground if you didn't see last week. So again, you connect your hands together over your head, or your mouth, or your heart, where they say your mind is. Come onto your knees. Place your forehead down. 3 more times. Body, speech, mind. Speech. Thank you so very much. If you watch this, as we will continue with a 3rd class next. So namaste.